I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. The new chair of the Senate Education Committee from San Bernardino, the Honorable Connie Leyva.
Thank you so much. What an awesome introduction. Wow. Well, I am thrilled to be here. I do love people. I do love children. Thank you for what all of you do every day, because you are helping to educate our future. And if we don't educate our future and our young people, then we are all doomed. I have to tell you a little story. I actually asked to be the chair of transportation, not because I have a passion for transportation, but I feel like the Inland Empire gets left out a lot, so I wanted to be the one at the table. So when the pro tem called and said, I really need you to do education. You don't have to tell me yes now, but you could think about it, but please think about it. I said, I don't need to think about it. Yes, I would love to do it, because I am passionate about education and passionate about our children. And I really hope to be in this position. I have 8 years left, and I underestimated how good it would feel to get reelected. It was pretty cool. Not that I had a hard reelection, but just as was stated, having that first term behind you and really feeling confident about what you're doing and how you can do it. So really happy to be here. I've been in the Inland Empire my entire life, and I do feel like in many ways the Inland Empire gets left out and left behind. So it's been my pleasure to be a strong voice for the Inland Empire and bring resources to the IE, not just to the residents, but also to our schools. And what all of you do every day, connectivity. We forget, and I remember when I was with my local union, and I was the president, and we were talking about how do we connect with our members, how do we talk to them? And I remember my reps telling me, oh, we should do everything online. We should, do everything over the internet and whatnot. And I said, but do we know if our members, if all of our workers actually have the internet at home? Do they actually have access? So this was about 10 years ago, but 10 years ago we did a survey, and of my local union, which was 5,000 people, just under 4,900, only 30% of our members had access to the internet at home. So that told me I needed to make sure we found lots of ways to connect with them and to communicate with them. So what you're doing with our children and the schools and making sure that they have that connectivity at home is critically important. And especially making sure that these big telecommunications companies do their part, right? Yes, I get very frustrated with them. How many of you hate your cell phone bill? I hate mine. I told my husband, you got to start paying this shit or none of us are going to have a phone. Sorry. Between him and I and our 2 kids, I'm like, that's a ton of money. I could almost be driving a new car. So, but we can afford to do that. How do we make sure that they are responsible and they do what they're supposed to do for our children and our children's families? So I appreciate that you're all fighting for that, and I appreciate that you're putting pressure on them. And you just let me know if I need to have some conversations, because I'd be happy to. Yeah, please do, because they make a ton of money, and part of their responsibility is to give back. So Friday, I was at Marshall Middle School in Pomona. One of my favorite things about my job before I was even made chair of education was going to all of our schools and talking to our young people and talking to our amazing teachers and admin. I've been so pleasantly surprised. We always hear the negative things about our schools and what we need to do. I've been it's heartwarming to see what's actually happening in most of the schools that I have the privilege of representing. We have work to do, but the passion that is there from the teachers, the young people, we hear that, our young people aren't interested, they're not engaged. Well, I will tell you, teachers and administrators are finding a way to engage them and finding a way to make them interested. So I've been incredibly impressed. When I go to high schools, I love to talk to them about politics, and I'll say, okay, how many state senators are there in the state of California? And I will tell you, in 4 years, every single high school, they've said the same thing, 2. And I said, well, that is the right answer to a different question. we actually have 40 state senators, and I go on to talk about it. But I think it's interesting. One thing I do think we need to do is do a better job of teaching civics in our schools. But that's a discussion for another day. So I'm at Marshall Middle School, and I did not realize that because we've done a few career days there, and I did not realize that they had the 3 different levels of autistic classes. So they have low performing, middle performing, and high performing. And the reason I tell you this is because I went into all 3 classes. The administrator, the principal said, "Would you do that?" I said, "I would love to," but I also know that autistic children can't always tolerate a lot of stimulus. So I said, "Please make sure I'm appropriate," because sometimes I'm excited and I don't want to scare people. So the reason I say this is the technology that they were using at all 3 levels with these children was just outstanding and just amazing. In the middle performing class, I got to work with a young man by the name of Angel, and they had a whiteboard, interactive board up, and he was learning what is today. And he would put his finger on it and pull down, today is Friday. What was yesterday? He went to Thursday and pulled that down. What will tomorrow be? Put his finger on it, pulled it down. Tomorrow is Saturday. And it was wonderful to see how we can use technology to make sure that every child reaches their full potential. And it makes me think about what you all do about making sure that our young people have that when they go home. And then how do we make sure that parents, thank God I have children because they help me know what I should be doing on the internet and not be doing on the internet. I'm old. I still write checks. I still like to read a book. I don't necessarily like my iPad to read on, but we have to make sure that we teach our parents and we show our parents so that they can help their children excel. So by making sure that they have those internet services at home is critically important, but also what do we do to make sure the parents know how to use it? And then also make sure that our young people are going on the right sites, right? Because we also know, as a parent, when my girls were younger, you worry about them going places they shouldn't go on the internet. So there's a lot of work to do. And I just really appreciate what you're doing. I'm so excited to be a part of education in the Senate. It is K through 12 and higher ed, so we get to cover the whole gamut. Today we'll be introducing a bill to redo financial aid for community colleges because many of you may not know, but sometimes it's more expensive to go to community college than it is to go to a UC and a CSU. Shocking, right? It's because we don't provide the same aid at the community college level. And we also have to worry about these young people because they don't have access to the internet. So how do we make sure that you make it through and graduate from high school? Now you want to go to college. How do you have access to that? So it's very reasonable to go to community college. It's $46 a unit, but that's not the barrier. The barrier is books, food, housing, transportation. So this bill will be all-encompassing and find a new way to make sure they have access to the same financial aid that our students at UCs and CSUs have. So I feel very, very, very lucky to be in this position, and you should all feel lucky. I know you have hard days. You don't probably always feel that way, but on a good day, you have educated you've educated our future. I think about teachers and sometimes they forget how much and what an impact they have on on children's lives. When our girls were in grammar school, I remember I told my husband, I said, wow, I said, they spend more waking hours with their teacher than they do with you and I. So it's so critically important when you're with those children to realize what an awesome impact you have and that you really are shaping their lives. So I thank you for that, and I look forward to working with all of you. Ask me anything. Like I said, I hope I get to be the chair for the next 8 years so that we can really impact education in California. One of those things is money. We need to make sure our per pupil spending is at like 41 in the nation. That's just wrong, so we have work to do on that. But anyway, I am an elected official. I could speak for hours, but I will not do that to you. I thank you for what you do. Please let me know what I can do to be helpful. Have a great rest of the day. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Heart Day. I would love to take questions. Yes. Yeah.
I got to tell you, it's so wonderful.
You're so awesome.
I'm going to make San Bernardino. Is Barbara there yet? Yes.
All right, Miss Barbara.
Richardson, you have to lead this off. She heads up their innovation, their technology. That's their team there. Superintendent Dale Marston and the entire board give her tremendous support. So, Barbara, you have to ask Senator Leyva a question.
Barbara, how can I help you in San Bernardino? Good morning. Yes. So what ways can we be better at getting technology out to families? You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I agree with you. And because it's the parents, right? You're at home and you want to help your children. I mean, if any of you who have school-aged kids, do you remember when your kids' math got so hard that you couldn't help them? That was a really bad moment for me when I thought I was a pretty smart mom, and I'm like, well, I can't do 5th grade math. That's a problem. So how do we do that? And I think that's one of the things that we need to focus on, because all parents, I believe, want the best for their children. They might not be able to do it themselves, but how do we either educate them or how do we find them the resources so they can? So I'd be happy to work with you on that because I do think it's critically important. Thank you, Barbara. Anybody else have any questions? It's amazing. You guys have a lot.
Ninth largest district in California. And thank you. You actually could hear me probably back there, but we're recording. I know. Okay, so San Bernardino has focused on improving academics, turning around that school district, and every student who's graduating has both a certificate, a diploma and a certificate in a career path.
Yes, I love that.
You know, that's amazing. And then they decided to go off and buy 5,000 devices and get them into the hands of because that was a passion of the school board. Then they asked, well, how do we actually, best use it? And then they've come back and started immersion in schools, and we started with our first 5. So one of the reasons that we in the companies who are doing corporate consolidation say you need to invest in adoption is so there's a resource for those community-based organizations to help the schools on digital literacy training. So to Barbara's question and your offer to help talk to some companies,
yes,
I will give you the list.
Good, I'll talk to all of them. I am happy to do that.
We're in negotiations, and no better person to talk to them than you. And, I also want to just acknowledge Nick. Your staff is here.
Yay,
Aiden
Nick.
was out there. Thank you for
Raise your hand,
for
Nick.
being here. Yes, Nick. Thank you. Okay, very good staff. Other questions to Senator Leyva?
And while you're thinking of your question, I just want to comment on the certificate that young people are coming out of high school with. Career technical education has been my passion since I was elected, and we've done a bill every year on career technical education. That's another reason why I'm so passionate about our community colleges, is because we want to make sure that those young people with those certificates have a place to go and where they can actually learn something, and in 18 months or 2 years, come out with another certificate that gives them a living wage job. Yes. Jobs, when people talk about jobs, and don't get me started about that, all jobs are not created equal. If you cannot take care of yourself and you cannot take care of your family with the job you have, those are not the jobs we want in our cities. So we have to do a better job of making sure our young people are ready to go for the 21st century. So thank you for what you're doing, San Bernardino.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Salvador Madrigal, Stevens Middle School for La Unified. What investments do you have in early education?
That do I personally have?
No.
Or what we're thinking about doing?
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that. I am also the chair of the Women's Caucus. The Women's Caucus has been working on early childhood education since before I came to the Senate. We will begin we'll work on that again this year. It will be a priority. 0 to 3 is one of the hardest groups to fill and so we look at early childhood education in two buckets. One bucket is how do we make sure that, and it's mostly mom who stays home, how do we make sure mom has childcare for her 0 to 3 year old so she can be in the workforce, which helps the entire family. And then the other bucket is the actual early childhood learning from 3 to 5. We had significant problems with Governor Brown. He just did not, he did a lot of good things for California. He did not get the early childhood education piece. I think that's because he never had children, his wife never had children. And, you know, when we'd meet with him every year, I would say, Governor, you know, you've done wonderful work on commuting sentences in the prisons and blah, blah, blah. I said, you do know if you pay it on the front end, early childhood education, then you don't pay it on the back end in the prisons. And the first year he said, do you think that's really true? And I said, well, I do think it's really true, but there's actually studies that back it up. So we now have a new governor who has come right out the gate and said he wants to invest in early childhood education. So I am super hopeful that we'll get a lot done. You all know how critically important that is. And my big thing is your zip code should not determine the education you get. And I had a teacher from Pomona ask me at a coffee I did on Saturday. He said, Connie, he goes, what they're doing in Laguna Beach, what my nephew is learning about in Laguna Beach is not happening at the school that I teach at. And that's wrong. So one of my goals is to work on that as well.
And I just want to acknowledge that Principal Madrigal in Stevens Middle School in Long Beach is also one of our flagship school-to-home schools that is in the center of a neighborhood transformation initiative. So aligning city and county services to be integrated to support all of the if you will, the challenges that students often face, their parents face, in order to allow the schools to carry out their mission. Long Beach Unified School District immediately signed the partnership agreement. Superintendent Chris Steinhauser said, "I'm on." The chair of the board did. The city of Long Beach is waiting to sign. The county of LA. So if you see Janice, see
Yes.
Supervisor Hahn, please
Yep.
encourage her to do that as chair of the board.
I can
and
call her
then
too.
Patrick O'Donnell immediately signed that agreement, so the state was in.
Excellent.
And I think, and we're working on one in San Bernardino, so we'd like to have the
Yeah,
to
let me
lead
know
on
what I
that
need to
too,
do.
Connie.
Happy
so
to do it.
I just wanted you to know that whole
Thank you.
continuum. Okay. Another, yes,
Yes,
Raul,
sir.
you have to introduce yourself too. I'll get you this. Oh, okay. Raquel's going to do that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Raul Ayala, I'm the principal at Shamal Middle School in Riverside Unified. Just don't throw away from Chino.
Yes, it is. Right down
so-
to 60.
So my question, I'm glad we're talking about early education because I think we know that we're missing a prime window in early development for kids where language and literacy is key and it cannot be missed. And so one of the things that I struggle with in our profession is that I look at other industries and what they do with design thinking. You know, let me give you an example.
Yeah.
So in NASCAR, I don't know if you remember Dale Earnhardt
Yes.
and what happened to him. So they bring in the brightest minds and the engineers to figure out, you know, how do we reduce this? How do we make this safer for our drivers? And then you see what they do now with these vehicles, and they'll, you know, and it's just amazing. So they brought again the brightest engineers to figure this out. Why aren't we doing stuff like that in education, where we figure out, like, let's figure out this literacy thing? Can't we bring a group of the brightest minds to be able to do this in our education, through our systems, so that it just reverberates across that? Because on my school site, that's what we struggle with. I can do something with kids that come in at a 5th and grade level, you know, even reading. But when I'm trying to meet a gap and they're at a 3rd grade level, I mean, you talked about the pipeline to prison. And so that would be, and yesterday we heard about the California Collaborative, and they're looking to us, well, what do you want to do?
Right.
And I think there was somebody across the room that said that, and that resonated with me. And so why aren't we looking at more of the design thinking and bringing our brightest minds together to help us figure this out? Eternal optimist, I think that we can do it. I don't know why we just choose not to do so.
So I know we can do it. And when I was named chair of education, I think the problem is that mostly in the Senate and in the Assembly, folks are focused on higher ed. And what I said to people who came to talk to me is I said, I am a K through 12 gal, because if we don't get them ready down here, they're never going to go to college. Community college, UC, CSU. And I also think the problem is it's been funding. Governor Brown was not great at giving us funding. You guys probably know for 10 years prior to 2014, we did not fully fund Prop 98. And now for the last 4 years, we have fully funded Prop 98. So I think honestly, there's been a lack of will to. It's not a lack of how to. I think there's been a lack of will to. And I could not agree with you more about literacy. When I was in the labor movement, there was his name was Donald Ellis. He worked at a Vons in West Covina, Vons 56. And when I took that store over as a rep, he was older than me at the time. I was in my early 40s, and he was probably in his early 50s. And the other rep said, "Oh, Donald's always grumpy. He's always unhappy. He's always mean." And when I met him, I'm like, "Hey, Donald." He goes, "I'm not going to like you either." I go, "Yeah, you're going to like me, Donald. We're going to be friends." So, I kept talking to him. Well, come to find out, he couldn't read. He was in his 50s, and he couldn't read. And for me, that was really a watershed moment to think, how did this happen? How did he get passed along? He did have a learning disability, but literacy has always, from that moment on, has always been critical to me, because you can't do anything in life if you can't read. So I think we are in a unique moment. You have my commitment that is something I will push, because it is just that important. But I really do think it's been a lack of will to, and not a lack of how to. Sometimes people think, do you all remember when you learned how to read? I don't. I feel like I've always been able to read, but we forget it was someone sitting with us. I remember the Sam I Am books and reading Sam I Am, and it was the teacher, it was my parents reading with me. So we absolutely have to take care of literacy. So you have my commitment that will be a big focus for me.
We have one last question.
Okay.
I think a great follow-on. Kim?
So good morning. My name is Kim Burris. I'm in Inglewood Unified School District. And we'd like to know, how can we support you so that you can get the Senate to follow your lead?
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll tell you the secret. Calling your elected representatives is critically important. Putting pressure on us to do the right thing for education. You don't have to come to the Capitol. That's great if you can. You can meet with your electeds in district. You can meet with our great staff. Nick does all my education staff. He did already. I said, it's going to be a busy year now, Nick. But let us know and hold our feet to the fire. When we are elected, our job is to serve our constituencies. And it's not just the million people I represent in SD20, because when I vote, that vote affects the entire state of California. So call, write letters, send teachers, send parents to meet in our district offices, send emails. I would say emails are the lowest form that we take it the least seriously. I mean, we track all of them on Team Leyva. I know who's emailed me and whatnot, where they're from. But when someone actually takes the time to make a phone call, to come meet at the Capitol or in a district office, then we know it's a priority. So put pressure on us to do our job.
And then I have one other question. It's somewhat unrelated, but since you're here, I'm going to ask you.
Please do.
I have a young adult daughter who's in school. She wants to be a nurse. So she's been taking classes at one of our local junior colleges, West LA, and has one class to complete the prerequisite program. She's at Southwest now. There is a stark contrast in the staffing, resources, and facilities. I'd like to know, who do I contact so I can support her and teach her how to advocate for what she deserves?
Yes.
Not sure what that process looks like, but I need to contact someone and let them know that what she's getting is not acceptable.
So I would say go to the chancellor's office. She's not getting what she needs at the community college, right?
Well, she's got an instructor who's not well prepared. She's sitting in a bungalow that is not clean. And she's, fighting to get classes that she needs. So
I maybe start with the administration office there on campus, but the chancellor, I know Eloy, but you know what? Hold his feet to the fire like you're going to hold my feet to the fire. And I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like our community colleges are not created equal. I was at Palomar Community College close to San Diego this weekend. My husband's a baseball coach, so he was there scouting. And what an amazing facility. And I'm like, why do they have this? And some of the community colleges near me don't. So I intend to have that conversation with the chancellor. And find out, how do we do that? It can't all be funding. Is it priorities? Because how did they do it, but I can't do it at San Bernardino Valley College? But I would put some pressure on them, and you have her advocate for herself. I remember when I was at Mount Sac, that's where I started my college career, and I couldn't get my classes, and I was at the door saying, how do I do this? I can't stay in community college for the rest of my life. So sometimes people will only do what we make them do. So get her out there. You get out there too, Mom. It's all good.
And that's a great suggestion, Connie. And we'll give you Eloy Oakley's email. I'll put you in touch with Eloy. He and I were co-chairs of the California Economic Summit for a number of years. So we will do that.
Beautiful.
I think we have just hit a home run by having the opportunity to be with you. Thank you so much. Please give another round of applause to
Senator
yourself, Connie Leyva.
For what you do. Thank you so much for having me. And I really, truly look forward to working with all of you. Make sure you let me know what you want. And I always tell people, tell me what bills you like and tell me what bills you don't like. We vote on over 3,000 bills every year. I will be intimately involved in all the education bills. But if there are other things you don't like, let me know. Thank you so much. Thank you.